I'm Shahar Azani, and welcome to this JBS special, Eye on Israel, from Israel. Today, I have the pleasure of being with Dr. Mordechai Kedar. Dr. Kedar is a renowned Israeli expert on Arab culture. He is a former professor at Bar-Ilan University and a current researcher at the Begin-Sadat Center for Strategic Studies. Dr. Kedar, it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Shahar, it's my honor.
You know, we have an opportunity to really take some time, which is a JBS precious gift, to dive into the headlines where people see as a fleeting bulletin on their iPhones. We have the chance to sit with an expert and really try to delve deeper into what's happening today. And since we are looking at, the Israeli political system and the happenings of the Middle East, I would like to start with you with the Islamic movement. In the past year, we have in Israel, we have seen the participation of the Joint Arab List headed by Mansour Abbas to be part of the coalition. This has never happened before. I would like you to share with our viewers, first of all, a few words about this movement, what it is exactly in the Israeli context and maybe in the general context, and then how you see this participation.
Well, the Muslim Brotherhood is a worldwide organization which was established almost 100 years ago, in 1928, in Egypt, because of the infiltration of the British culture into Egypt under the umbrella of the British rule over Egypt those days. Some Islamists, headed by Hassan al-Banna, the first objective of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt of those days was to get rid of the British occupation. The second thing is to get rid of the British or the Western culture, which infiltrated the Egyptian society and, in their view, corrupted the women by convincing them not to go with the hijab, to work, and all these changes in gender issues. Islamists view these changes as very dangerous to Islam. So we, means Muslims, have to get rid of the Western culture which settled in the hearts of our people, especially our daughters and wives. And the third goal is to implement the Sharia. Right. Why do we need to go to Switzerland to translate their constitution? We have the Quran. And these actually are the three goals of the Muslim Brotherhood ever since 1928. Now, this organization has chapters in every country which has a group of Muslims who live in this country. Maybe 2,000, 3,000 were enough to establish this organization. In the Middle East today, they are not, of course, they're not British anymore, no French, but they consider the regimes which operate according to Western dictate or Western ideas also as some kind of occupation. This is why Sadat and Mubarak were regarded to as occupiers or part of the occupation, Western occupation of our country, because they actually were listening to what is being said to them by the British and by the Americans. They actually were the long hand of the foreign countries in our country. That's why Mubarak and formerly Sadat were viewed as some kind of occupation of the...
So which regimes in the Arab world are perceived as such by the Muslim Brotherhood?
Egypt, Syria, Jordan. Every regime is viewed as something which works for the West or the East, the Soviet Union as it was. So they are definitely acting in order to get rid of these occupations. Secondly, they want to kick out all the cultural changes which came to the societies with women, homosexuals, lesbians, the mass media. All these new inventions which are viewed as negative in Islam. Of course, medicine is okay, but television is not okay. So they want to get rid of these things and implement the Sharia. When it comes to Israel, we also have the Muslim Brotherhood organizations in plural, And for this, we'll mention the main two, which are the two parts of the former united Islamic movement, which was established in the late 70s, early 80s. These two factions of the Islamic movement are different from each other by the radicalism. Means what they call the northern one is much more radical, and for them Armageddon could happen every day, and they might be even willing to push it forward and to support it. They don't see any way to cooperate with the state. They're headed by Shahar Azani, who considers himself as somebody who, like Salah ad-Din, who came to kick the Ottomans from this country.
He was also in prison.
Yes, he comes in and out because he keeps cursing policemen, spitting on them, all these things. So this is the more radical faction. They don't vote for the Knesset. They don't want to sit in the Knesset because for them, voting and sitting in the Knesset means that you actually accept the state, and although it is an occupation. The other faction, the southern one, which is headed by Mansour Abbas, they think that yes, we have an obligation to fight peacefully against the Jews, yet our timetable is much longer. We don't need it now. It could be in another generation, another generation. Means that they feel they don't have to put all their power now and all the ammunition. They can say, okay, my son will do the job, my grandson will do the job. I will show them how and I'll teach them. So this is more or less the Islamic movement in Israel. They are in a jihad, economic jihad and political jihad. And this in their what they say about themselves, in their words. Mansour Abbas had an interview with the TV station in Arabic, and he told him, I am here in order to implement the Chabad.
To implement?
To implement the jihad. To implement the jihad against the state. They call it jihad madani, means civil jihad. They cannot go to jihad safe, means with the sword. They cannot boycott Israel economically because they are part of the country. So they pray for the mujahideen wherever they are, or they sit in the Knesset and undermining the Knesset from within. And this is what happens with the Islamic movement. And unfortunately, there are Israelis who don't see it or don't want to see it.
I want to ask you something. You're talking about ambitions, right? Long-term ambitions, short-term ambitions. There are elements in let's talk about, the fight for Israel's public image. There are elements out there who feel uncomfortable with collaborating with, let's say, the evangelicals because of their long-term vision. And there are others who feel that, they may have this long-term vision of turning all Jews into Christians, but for the time being, it is conducive to work with them for the benefit of the state of Israel. Should we use the same spectacles in looking into the partnership with the Islamic movement, the southern faction, and say, okay, I understand they may have this long-term vision about this and that, but for the time being, we have a faction within the Israeli Knesset who is not focused on the Palestinians, who wants to work with us, who acknowledges the state as a Jewish state, who is willing to work with us to make things better. Shouldn't that be the outlook? How do you see that?
Well, this is how the government, which just finished its life, thought. They thought that if they cooperate with them, they would be nice. The problem is that the money which was given to them, you have no control of it, and they are already sending money to Gaza, to orphans and widows. Okay. Would they give it the money, I believe, in cash? Maybe. So can you trace it? No. And don't forget that if you support these needy people, you actually release Hamas from the obligation to bring them and to meet and to feed them. So definitely the fact that they are supporting Gaza is a very, very big problem, in addition to be an offense against the law. And they are doing many other things which are actually undermining the Israeli hold, especially in Jerusalem. And they should be regarded as Muslim Brotherhood. And don't forget, they don't see any reason for the mere existence of the state of Israel. And they say it and they act to this in old age homes and all these things. So definitely, the Islamic movement here in Israel is a movement which should be outlawed.
South and North.
South and North.
And a few months ago, during the budgetary discussions in the Knesset, Mansour Abbas actually was standing on the podium managing the session, and the Haredi member of Knesset, Moshe Gafni, was speaking about the plights of the ultra-Orthodox sector as a result of that budget. And it was Mansour Abbas who said, we're willing to allocate so-and-so funds to support Haredi communities. How do you view these actions by Mansour Abbas, who visited a synagogue that got hurt in Lod, and as you don't buy into this?
This is all taqiyya. Taqiyya in Arabic means deception in order to convince the Israelis that he is a good man. No, he is a good man maybe personally, but on the organizational level, he is a member of a movement which sees no reason for the mere existence of the state of Israel, let alone the laws and everything which are not important. The important is that Israel should not be there.
Dr. Kedar, he went into a public fight with Yahya Sinwar, or there was an exchange between them, again a few weeks ago. How do you see that exchange between the leader of Hamas and Mansour Abbas?
Look, many of Israel's enemies fighting with each other about all kinds of things. So this is no news. They are both against Israel. And they have issues between them.
So that's how you frame...
Of course.
And, you know, it takes me to what's happening in the Gaza Strip and with the Palestinian Authority. Israel withdrew from the Gaza Strip. The consequences have been dire. We have seen what's happened to Israel ever since, even before, but the problem exacerbated. How do you see a possible solution of the Gaza problem? Because every time we go back into this vicious cycle of another war in Gaza, another denunciation of Israel, another report, another war in Gaza, a few years, where are we going to go with this?
Look, the only solution, the only possible solution, is to emulate the emirate paradigm. What does it mean? An emirate in the Arab world is an entity which is based on a family. It could be extended family, it could be tribe, it could be clan, it could be, the name doesn't mean much, as long as the people are related to each other and they live together, and they will marry their daughters within the group, and they open businesses within the group. So this is actually what the emirate is, and the leadership is legitimate because they're part of the group. While other countries in the Middle East like Iraq, Syria, Libya, Sudan, Algeria are failing states because there are many tribes in them, many ethnic groups like Kurds, Arabs, Turkmens and others, and sectarian group. And of course religious groups like Muslims, Christians, Jews, Sabbais, Mandays. In Iraq there are only 10 religions. You know about this? Wow. 10 religions only in Iraq. And some of them are divided to denominations. So, this is the source of all evil, all this structure of the society, because the British, when they established the state of Iraq, and they marked the borders, they thought that whoever is within the borders will adopt the mindset of Iraqis and sing together with whatever he likes.
Lump them all together.
Right. It didn't happen. the Muslims remain loyal to Islam, while Christians remain loyal to Christianity, and so Jews reliant on their own issues, means that the state failed in its main mission to replace the traditional loyalties into a normal loyalty to the state, to Iraq. And there are various reasons why it didn't happen. The main reason is because they don't get married with each other. So this is what I'm saying, the failing state. So Syria is a failing state,
right.
Sudan, because there are multiple tribes. Now, if you go back to Iraq, for example, or to the Emirates, excuse me, the Emirates are stable. Why? Because every emirate is one tribe. So nobody fights each other. In Iraq, they fight each other. That's why Iraq is a failing state. Right. Libya is also fighting each other. So everybody knows that there are genetic problems in Sudan. So here we are. We have a winning paradigm in the Middle East, which is the emirate, and the losing paradigm, which is the state, which is also an emirate, which is a failing state. What I think is that what we should is to implement the winning paradigm here, while creating emirates to the Palestinians in the Judea and Samaria, and one in Hebron, means based on the cities, one in Hebron, one in Ramallah, Bethlehem, but not exactly, because Bethlehem is another case. So we are talking about Hebron, about Jericho. We talk about Nablus, Jenin, Tulkarem, Kalkilia, in addition to Gaza, which is also an emirate for 15 years already. And the government should be based on the families, the local families. Means,
so is this what's happening in Gaza now? You mentioned that you view Gaza as an emirate.
Gaza is a state.
It's a state.
Yeah.
But it's not controlled
whether we
by
like
the
it
family.
or not.
It's controlled by Hamas.
Yeah. Gaza is a state. We should
what
recognize Gaza as a state.
And what would you do with a hostile emirate, a hostile state like Gaza?
No, emirate, Gaza needs special treatment, but emirates usually are very peaceful, because the emirate mindset is about prosperity and so forth. So this is why all the chances are for the success of this plan, but there is no Israeli politician who would take it as a platform for himself.
Why? Is it because those politicians, have they been presented with your idea, or are they stuck to the old Oslo paradigms, or thinking that this is what's going to be?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I'm asking if, first of all, have you ever presented that solution to Israeli leaders? And second of all, why do you think they're unwilling to consider it? Are they too stuck on the Oslo paradigm, or what they thought it should be decades ago, and that's how they want to move forward?
I spoke about this to several ministers and Knesset members, including Naftali Bennett, including others. They know about this, and Bennett sometimes actually relates to this, and it's all the 8-state solution or 8-emirate solution.
Right.
And Bennett himself, he asked me about this plan, so I gave him the details, and but no, he did nothing about this, Bennett. And there are others who know about this, but I think that they're all afraid of the Americans, who do not agree to such a solution. So
the Americans know about your solution?
Yes,
Have you ever engaged with the Americans?
I sat with one of the most influential people in the time of Trump in Washington, D.C. I sat with him, and he actually asked the right questions and got the right answers. But, for this, to say that we are undoing everything which was done since 1993, and we are almost 30 years was too difficult, and apparently people do not hide it, unfortunately.
How do you see, without your plan, what do you see in the future of the Palestinian Authority? Let's talk about Judea and Samaria for a minute. The Fatah movement, Mahmoud Abbas,
most probably, and this is what I hear from all kinds of sources, is that after Mahmoud Abbas leaves office in a way or another, the Witchil.
What do you expect to see after Mahmoud Abbas leaves office?
Well, already we are talking about 5 militias. Mahmoud al-Alul, Tawfiq Tirawi, Rajub, Majid Faraj, and another one, who are preparing with militias to fight each other.
So you're talking about chaos. Almost a breakout of a Palestinian civil war.
Well, yes, definitely.
And what should Israel do in such a case?
Well, Israel should dismantle the PA altogether and give the authorities to the local people.
And you can identify those local people?
Yes,
You can tell the Israeli authorities, these are the people you should go to?
I know exactly, because they are the heads of the clans, the local clans.
And I want to take you one step back. We were talking about the region. Let's talk about Saudi Arabia for a minute. We have seen some sort of a honeymoon between Saudi Arabia and the Trump administration, and then come in the Democrats and the assassination of Jamal Khashoggi, and now you're seeing some sort of a Biden distancing himself from MBS, and then the American president plans on visiting Saudi Arabia. Do you see the Americans rethinking their relationship with Saudi Arabia?
I hope so, because don't forget that today Saudi Arabia is viewed as the only state which can lower the prices of crude oil.
So that's what it's all about. How much are people going to pay?
Yes, because it will have a very big presence in the 20th of November.
In the midterm.
In the midterm.
But that's it. That could dictate the Middle Eastern relationship between the United States, Saudi Arabia, and beyond, because we know that the Americans are hoping to see some movement there. At first, we weren't sure about the Americans' reaction to the Abraham Accords, which had Trump all over them, and now we're seeing them shifting in a different direction. What are you hoping to see between Saudi Arabia and Israel? Do you really think that there is...
I always hope for peace, doves, and flowers, and hugs and kisses.
And is there a chance that we will see significant progress?
We might have handshake, which is the lowest which they have to, and this might be the significant change from this visit.
And into this salad, I want to throw in the Saudi peace initiative. Is that dead? The Saudi peace initiative between Israel and the Palestinians?
Well, if countries like the Bahrainis and the United Arab Emirates and others are making peace with us, which is totally against this 2002 Saudi peace plan. So Saudi Arabia understands that if something doesn't work and people work not according to this, so they don't need it. Good.
In that case, I understand. I want to move closer to Israel now. We are seeing, the Iranians taking over many parts of Syria. What do you see in the future for the Bashar al-Assad regime? Does it even exist still?
No, not there. In the northeastern part of Syria, they are controlled by Kurds, and they are now under Turkish shelling and bombing. Maybe this will keep them in the capsule in order not to harm the others. Yet Syria is this dysfunctional state, as a state, totally dysfunctional.
And the Iranian presence in Syria?
Devastating.
For Syria itself, and of course, threatening to Israel.
Yes, and yes, and yes. All the above.
And how do you see what's happening in Lebanon at the moment?
Lebanon is another failing state, and which is now controlled by Hezbollah. Hezbollah does with Lebanon whatever they like. See? So Lebanon, actually, we should learn the lesson from Lebanon, because Lebanon was created Lebanon was created as a state for the Christians.
Right.
But they, because of their domestic politics, and they do not want to sit with this and sit with that, so they actually sunk into this swamp of struggles and everlasting struggles.
Right.
And the outcome we see today.
And we all remember the horrifying explosion in the port in Lebanon. Did Hezbollah pay a price for what they did? Was there any price paid by Hezbollah because of what they did with the explosion of their responsibility there?
Look, Hezbollah is the only functioning body in Lebanon, unfortunately. And today everybody looks at Hezbollah as some kind of savior.
Right.
Although Hezbollah is part of the problem.
Right, it's the destroyer.
Because nobody wants to invest any money in a country which is controlled by a terror organization. Yet, in this situation, is that Hezbollah is the only way out. But the problem is that they don't want to take the country out of the situation without taking it over.
Right. And can they? Can they?
Of course, they are much more powerful than the Lebanese army. Hezbollah can do whatever they like. Of course, they don't want to fight anyone. They don't want to kill people because they don't want to wake up the world to see what happens there. Yet, we should draw the conclusion from what happens in Lebanon because, don't forget, Lebanon was created for the Christians. Israel was created for the Jews. If we do what they did, they didn't also want to sit with each other, the Christians, because they were quarreling about this one and that one. That's why the Shia succeeded to take the country over. If we don't get our act together here in Israel and make a functioning government, the Islamic movement means the Israeli Hezbollah will raise up and take the country away.
How do you view Hezbollah's drones going after the Israeli gas reservoirs, the Shahar reservoir?
This is a joke. I want to see what Israel can do against missiles. This is the point. They are sending the drones in order to put us to sleep as if we can do something about this. But maybe Israel is doing something, I don't know, but they are waiting for the day which they can launch who knows how many thousands, or hundreds at least, of missiles against the gas platform there. What will happen there, I have no idea. But in a war, there's a war.
And do you see any chance of a possible confrontation between Hezbollah and the State of Israel?
Of course there is.
And do you see it happening soon, or are they going to wait for Lebanon situation to stabilize?
Look, Lebanon and the stabilization are oxymoron.
Right.
So I don't talk about all kinds of things which are in theory. Lebanon is taken by Hezbollah. This is the fact. The only question is now what Lebanon can do about this or not.
And do you see any weight to, sometimes we see social media or we see a demonstration by the Lebanese people. Does it stand any chance of pushing back against Hezbollah?
No. Hezbollah is a genie which came out of the bottle.
And it's as an Iranian proxy, Iran can do whatever it wants in Lebanon. So in essence, Iran has a border with Israel.
No doubt.
And at any point of their choosing, they can choose to use that border, that base, to attack Israel from Syria.
No doubt.
And how do you see Iran's relations with Hamas?
Hamas, don't forget, they are Sunnis.
Right.
While Iran is Shia.
Right.
However, when they are invited, they go. And the speeches which we hear from right, left, and center really do not give any hope that normalcy will come to this place.
I want to ask you one last question, because from what I'm hearing from you, the internal situation in Israel has a direct impact onto Israel's regional standing. And from what I hear from you, a show of strength internally and politically will project positively on Israel, and a show of weakness will project negatively on Israel. Is that correct?
Look, in the Middle East, the rule is very simple. Peace is something which is given only to the powerful, to the dangerous, and a party which nobody dares to mess with. This is what real peace in the Middle East is. Is it only temporary? Because it will last only as long as that party is strong and threatening and dangerous. And this peace will be violated, not according to the time which passes, because it's always a temporary peace, but according to the situation of the enemy. If the enemy returns to function, he's in a problem. So this is what we have here in the Middle East, and we should bear it in mind. Because if we are weak, it's the end of us. We can survive and have peace only with neighbors who are afraid of us.
I thank all of our viewers for watching this JBS special Eye on Israel from Israel with Dr. Mordechai Kedar, and we will see you soon again as we cast an eye on Israel. Shalom from the beautiful state of Israel.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more. Simply visit the JBS website at jbstv.org and click on the donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check to JBS, Post Office Box 360, Stamford, Connecticut 06904. Or you can call the JBS Pledge Line at 833-MY-JBS-TV. That's 833-695-2788. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. We thank you for your kind support.